In this video, we will explore a heartbreaking story from India, a country where women still face significant injustice and discrimination. Violence against women in India is not just a statistic, but a daily reality that happens behind closed doors. Millions of women in this country suffer from oppression, viewed as property or tools to serve the men in their families. Outdated customs, discrimination, and abuse of power have forced many women into lives that resemble living hell. Today, we revisit a shocking case from 2008 in Uttar Pradesh, India. This is the story of Divya, a young girl forced to marry a much older man, Avinav, a wealthy and powerful tycoon. She was treated as a commodity, abused physically and mentally, and even forced to serve officials to satisfy Avinav's personal interests. Divya endured a hellish life, but ultimately fought back against the injustice she faced. Her story is not just a murder case, but a silent cry for help for the millions of women suffering similar fates. Divya was born in 1987 in a small, impoverished village on the outskirts of Uttar Pradesh, India. Her family struggled to make ends meet. She was the fifth child in a family of 6 siblings. Divya's parents were farmers, working hard but barely scraping by. Due to their financial hardship, Divya could only finish high school. Although she dreamed of continuing her education, her aspirations were cut short. She had to stay home to help her mother with farm work and take care of her younger siblings, sacrificing her youth and dreams to support her family. Divya was described as a gentle and beautiful girl, with dark skin, big round eyes, and a bright smile. Her simple lifestyle and hardworking nature attracted attention in her village, but Divya kept to herself, hoping for a peaceful life, education, and a stable job to support her family. However, her life took a drastic turn when Avinav, a rich and influential tycoon, entered the picture. Avinav was born in 1962 in Varanasi, one of India's oldest and wealthiest cities. He came from a prosperous upper-class family with extensive land holdings and government connections. Avinav inherited a vast fortune and quickly became one of Varanasi's most powerful figures. Known for his manipulative tendencies and scandalous lifestyle, Avinav had already married 3 wives but was constantly seeking out more women to satisfy his desires. His wives lived in constant fear, enduring abuse and power struggles in their home. Avinav viewed women as little more than commodities to demonstrate his influence. On June 8, 2008, while passing through a village near Uttar Pradesh, Avinav saw Divya. Despite having 3 wives, he was immediately captivated by her beauty and innocence. Without hesitation, he used his wealth to arrange a marriage with her. Divya's family, struggling with heavy debt, reluctantly accepted Avinav's proposal, seeing it as an opportunity to escape poverty. For them, marrying off their daughter was a solution to their financial troubles. Divya, however, was devastated by the arrangement. The idea of marrying a man 25 years her senior, with whom she had no connection, was unbearable. She attempted to run away but was quickly caught. Her father, under pressure from economic hardships, beat her mercilessly. Broken and hopeless, Divya was forced to marry Avinav. On her wedding night, Divya's nightmare began. Instead of being treated as a wife, she was brutally abused by Avinav. He saw her as a possession, forcing her into humiliating acts to satisfy his sadistic desires. Her life became a cycle of physical and emotional torture. Avinav's other wives, particularly his first wife Aditi, also tormented Divya, seeing her as competition. Life in Avinav's household was a daily battle for survival. Divya was forced to do household chores from dawn until late at night, treated more like a servant than a family member. At night, the abuse only worsened as Avinav treated her cruelly in bed, forcing her into degrading acts. Avinav also exploited his wives, forcing them to serve powerful government officials to maintain his influence. For Divya, these experiences were deeply humiliating, stripping away her dignity and self-respect. The first time Divya was forced to entertain one of Avinav's political associates was on October 12, 2008. The politician was even more violent than Avinav, treating her like an object. He forced her to bark like a dog to satisfy his twisted desires. These nights left lasting scars on Divya's psyche, reminding her of the cruelty of the men she was forced to serve. On January 2, 2009, during New Year's celebrations, Divya saw an opportunity to escape. She fled to Mumbai, where she found work in a factory. Although the work was hard, it was a precious taste of freedom she had never experienced before. For a few short months, Divya lived in peace, although she constantly feared Avinav would find her. Unfortunately, with his powerful connections, Avinav tracked her down. When Avinav found her, he dragged her back to his home and locked her in a room for a week as punishment. Isolated and terrified, Divya knew that any further attempts to escape would lead to even more severe punishment. She changed her strategy, appearing to submit to Avinav's demands in order to gain his trust. She bided her time, waiting for the right moment to escape once and for all. One fateful evening, when Avinav came to her room, Divya saw her chance. As he fell asleep, Divya retrieved a hidden knife. Overcome with rage and despair, she stabbed him repeatedly, ending the life of the man who had made her existence a living hell. After the murder, Divya did not run. She stood over Avinav's body, consumed by a mix of relief and madness. When the police arrived, she was arrested and charged with murder. At the police station, Divya was treated as a cold-blooded killer. Her case was initially viewed as premeditated murder, with little consideration given to the abuse and violence she had endured. However, a journalist took an interest in her story, conducting an interview that revealed the full extent of her suffering. The article ignited public outrage, prompting a review of her case. The Central Bureau of Investigation (SPY) launched an investigation into Divya's claims. They interviewed Avinav's other wives and gathered evidence of the abuse she had faced. The investigation confirmed that Divya had been subjected to horrific violence and exploitation. She was not merely a murderer, but a victim of a cruel and oppressive system. Divya's trial took place in August 2009. The defense emphasized the years of abuse and coercion she had endured, arguing that she had been driven to kill Avinav in a desperate attempt to escape her torment. Although the court acknowledged her suffering, they still found her guilty of murder. Divya was sentenced to 14 years in prison, a lighter sentence than typical for murder due to the mitigating circumstances. Divya's case shed light on the widespread abuse of power and violence against women in India. It became a rallying cry for women's rights, exposing the systemic injustices that many women continue to face. Although Divya's story ended with a prison sentence, it remains a powerful reminder of the need to fight against the oppression of women. What do you think of Divya's 14-year sentence? Was it a fair punishment, considering the violence and oppression she endured? Or should she have received more forgiveness and protection? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Divya's case continued to attract widespread attention, with many human rights organizations and women's advocacy groups rallying behind her. They saw her story as representative of the oppression and exploitation faced by countless women across India, many of whom remain voiceless and invisible in the face of such abuse. Divya's courage in finally standing up against her oppressor, though it resulted in tragic consequences, highlighted the desperation that many women feel in these circumstances. While some believe that her 14-year prison sentence was a just punishment, considering the act of murder, others argued that she had already been punished enough through the years of torture, abuse, and exploitation she had suffered. To many, Divya was not a criminal, but rather a victim who had been pushed beyond her limits by a man who had treated her like an object and deprived her of her humanity. In the courtroom, during her trial, Divya remained composed, but her eyes told the story of a life filled with suffering, betrayal, and pain. Her defense team painted a vivid picture of the horrific conditions she had endured, emphasizing that she had been forced to act in self-defense against a man who had turned her life into a living nightmare. But even with the evidence of abuse and the public outcry in her favor, the law was still bound to view her actions as criminal, leading to the 14-year sentence. For the trial shed light on the broader issue of domestic violence, forced marriages, and the exploitation of women in patriarchal societies. For many, Divya became a symbol of the fight for women's rights and justice, a woman who had fought back against the oppressive system that had failed her. The media coverage of her case spurred heated debates across the country, with activists calling for stronger protections for women and reform to the laws that governed domestic abuse. In prison, Divya found a semblance of peace. While the memories of the abuse she had endured still haunted her, the knowledge that she had escaped the clutches of Avinav's cruelty within her with a sense of relief. She spent her days in prison reflecting on her life and the events that had led her to that point. Supporters regularly sent her letters, encouraging her to remain strong and offering their support. Some even advocated for her early release, arguing that she had suffered enough and deserved a chance at a new life. As time went on, Divya's case became a catalyst for changes in the way Indian society viewed women's rights. Human rights organizations continued to push for reforms that would better protect women from domestic violence, forced marriages, and the kind of systemic abuse that Divya had endured. They lobbied for stricter laws against those who abused their power and for better support systems for women who found themselves in situations like Divya's. For many, the tragedy of Divya's life was not just about the murder, but about the long history of oppression that had led to it. Her story revealed the dark underbelly of a society that often silenced women, treating them as property rather than individuals with rights and dignity. Divya's suffering was shared by many, and her story resonated with women across the country who had also experienced the cruelty of forced marriages and abusive relationships. The case prompted a broader discussion about the need for societal change, not just in India but around the world. It was a stark reminder that even in modern times, many women are still trapped in cycles of violence and exploitation with few avenues for escape. As Divya continued to serve her sentence, her case remained a powerful reminder of the need to fight for justice, equality, and the protection of women's rights. Her story echoed through the halls of justice and activism, sparking conversations that continue to this day. Systemic oppression of women. The root of Divya's suffering lay in the systemic oppression in societal structures that treated women as property rather than as individuals with autonomy. From a young age, Divya was forced to marry a much older man, Avinav, who was powerful and wealthy. This mirrors the experience of countless women who are pressured into arranged marriages, often without their consent or regard for their well-being. Lesson: societal structures that treat women as objects to be traded or controlled must be challenged. Women deserve the right to make decisions about their own lives, bodies, and futures. The story of Divya highlights the importance of empowering women through education, financial independence, and legal protection to resist patriarchal control. 2. The abuse of power and wealth. Avinav, a wealthy tycoon, not only abused Divya physically and emotionally but also used his influence to manipulate others and maintain control. He exploited his wealth and power to dominate his wives and make them subservient. By forcing them into humiliating acts and controlling their lives, he demonstrated how unchecked power can lead to gross violations of human rights. Lesson: power, when unchecked, can lead to exploitation and abuse. The story of Avinav shows how wealth and status often shield perpetrators of violence from accountability. There must be stronger legal frameworks and social structures in place to prevent the abuse of power and ensure that all individuals, regardless of their social status, are held accountable for their actions. 3. The importance of solidarity among women. In Avinav's household, the other wives, including Aditi, the most powerful of them, also oppressed Divya. Instead of banding together in solidarity, they viewed each other as rivals, perpetuating the cycle of abuse. While some felt sympathy for Divya, they chose self-preservation over collective action. This dynamic mirrors the broader issue of how, under patriarchal structures, women are often pitted against each other instead of uniting against their shared oppression. Lesson: women's solidarity is essential in combating gender-based violence and oppression. Divya's story underscores the importance of collective action and mutual support among women. Had the wives united against Avinav's cruelty, they might have been able to challenge his dominance earlier. It is crucial that women lift each other up and work together to fight systemic injustices. 4. The psychological impact of abuse. Divya endured years of physical and mental abuse, and this had a profound psychological effect on her. She was reduced to feeling like a dog, forced into dehumanizing acts to satisfy Avinav's sadistic desires. Her eventual breakdown and act of murder were the result of years of trauma and suffering. By the time she committed the crime, she had reached a point of psychological despair, feeling trapped with no other way out. Lesson: abuse is not just physical. The emotional and psychological scars it leaves can be even more devastating. Divya's mental and emotional breakdown shows the long-term impact of abuse. Society must prioritize mental health support for survivors of abuse and recognize the profound psychological toll that living in an abusive environment can take. 5. The failure of society to protect the vulnerable. Divya tried to escape her abusive situation by running away to Mumbai, but she was tracked down by Avinav and forcibly returned. This reflects the harsh reality that many women face. Even when they try to escape, they often find themselves trapped by social and legal systems that fail to protect them from their abusers. In Divya's case, the lack of proper legal recourse and protection allowed her abuser to continue his reign of terror. Lesson: legal systems and social safety nets must be strengthened to provide real protection for women fleeing abuse. Divya's story serves as a stark reminder that society needs to offer better support systems, including shelters, legal aid, and enforcement of protection orders to prevent victims from being re-victimized. 6. The role of media in uncovering injustice. It wasn't until a brave journalist investigated Divya's case that the truth about her life and the abuse she suffered came to light. Without this media attention, Divya may have been condemned as just another murderer without anyone understanding the years of suffering that led to her desperate act. The media played a crucial role in shifting public perception and bringing attention to her plight. Lesson: the media can be a powerful tool in exposing injustice and advocating for victims of abuse. It is vital for journalists and the press to remain vigilant in investigating stories of those who are marginalized and voiceless. Responsible journalism can hold those in power accountable and shed light on stories that would otherwise be forgotten. 7. The need for comprehensive legal reform. Although Divya's story gained public attention, her 14-year prison sentence still reflects a legal system that struggles to balance punishment with justice for victims of abuse. While the court acknowledged her suffering, it still viewed the act of murder as a crime, even though it was born out of years of oppression. This highlights the need for more nuanced legal approaches that take into account the context of abuse when prosecuting crimes committed by victims of violence. Lesson: legal reforms are necessary to ensure that justice is served in cases involving prolonged abuse and exploitation. Courts should consider the context of domestic violence, forced marriages, and systemic abuse when making judgments. Divya's case underscores the importance of creating laws that recognize the complexities of abuse and allow for more compassionate and fair outcomes for victims. 8. Empowerment through education and economic independence. Divya's inability to continue her education and pursue a career made her more vulnerable to being controlled by her family and Avinav. Without economic independence or education, she had few options for escaping her situation. This is a common issue for women in patriarchal societies where lack of education and financial dependence keeps them trapped in abusive relationships. Lesson: education and economic empowerment are key tools in preventing abuse and giving women the ability to control their own destinies. Societies must invest in ensuring that girls and women have access to education and opportunities for financial independence. Empowered women are better able to resist oppression and make decisions that protect their well-being. Conclusion: Divya's story is not just one of personal tragedy, but a reflection of the broader societal issues that continue to plague women around the world. It illustrates the ways in which patriarchy, abuse of power, and gender-based violence can destroy lives. However, it also serves as a call to action for society to do better in protecting the vulnerable, empowering women, and reforming the systems that perpetuate these injustices. Her story offers lessons in resilience, the dangers of unchecked power, and the importance of solidarity, education, and legal reform. By reflecting on Divya's experience, we can work toward building a more just and equitable society where no woman has to suffer in silence or be forced into desperate actions to escape abuse. What do you think? Have you seen similar stories in the news? What changes do you think need to happen to protect women like Divya from abuse and exploitation? Share your thoughts in the comments below.